Alright, first of all, look at that, our first delve into the 90s. This is my 8th episode of Years in Animation. Honestly, I think a lot of the reason for me sticking to the 2000s and 2010s has been a quantity issue. Hell, this was one of the best years of the 90s, and it still was tough to scrounge enough to suffice for a full Years in Animation video. But I think 1999 is a fair year to kick off the 90s on this channel because this was a year multiple studios took serious risks. For Pixar, it was their first sequel, after a film that didn't quite do as well as their first. For Disney, they were stepping away from the musical format that really boomed in their early 90s work, and made a movie that didn't have songs, didn't have a princess in it, even the last movie sorta did, and a bunch of more foreign countries took some leaps with their studios. This is the first time I've seen Madhouse and Toho on here. Risks are necessary to make your film stand out. For some films it works, and for Iron Giant, it's remembered fondly. So today, let's take a look at 1999, Animation's Riskiest Year. Subscribe if you haven't already. Pixar's release this year was Toy Story 2, as I said, their first sequel. Next to Coco, this is one of my favorite Pixar films, and easily my favorite of the three from the 90s. It's one of the few sequels that actually builds on its predecessor and expands on its ideas. Following Woody getting kidnapped by a toy collector who I swear is just Wayne Knight, they could have just called him Wayne Knight and I wouldn't have thought the wiser.
Oh, if only you had your hand-stitched polyvinyl.
Of course, this toy collector wants Woody because it turns out he's a collector's item. How did he land in the hands of Andy then? It's a stat. I'm getting ahead of myself. So Buzz and the others band together to go save him, even though he may not want to be saved, as he bonds with the other members of his once famous TV show, Woody's Roundup, mostly Jessie and Bullseye. Off the bat, I like that the first film was about Woody helping Buzz realize the purpose of a toy, and this time, Buzz has to do it for Woody. But it doesn't just feel like they're reversing the roles. In the first movie, Woody had to show Buzz why being a toy isn't all that bad. Just because he's not a Space Ranger doesn't mean he doesn't have value. Here, Woody forgets the path of being a toy and Buzz has to remind him. I also love some of these little side plots. Zurg can kind of be considered a villain in this, that's really cool. All he was in the first film was a small threat in Buzz's universe. Here, he's straight up handing Buzz's ass to him.
But Buzz is in peril!
It also goes without show that this is one of the few sequels, especially animated, that is leagues more emotional than the predecessor. But I'm not talking about that scene, I'll get to that in a bit. I'm talking about the scene where Woody has to choose between his friends and a lifetime of appreciation from children. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and get this out. This one thing I'm sure people will hate me for. I don't really get emotional at Jessie's backstory. This is the scene whenever I talk about this film, it's always the scene friends bring up. And it's a good scene, but I never saw it as an emotional powerhouse. For one reason, how's that dislike counter looking? Alright, I don't like the song. There, I'm an asshole. One of you better send a death threat in the comments. If I don't see a death threat in my comment section, I'm going to be pissed. I've heard the argument for Tarzan, which also dropped this year, that the Phil Collins music doesn't fit the movie because it's just crammed in there when a score would have been just fine. Instead, the guy from Genesis just keeps telling you how to feel. I hear that more for Brother Bear, but regardless, that's how I kinda feel about this song. Sarah McLachlan is a great singer. It's not her fault. It's the lyrics. I'm sorry. I think this is as close to pushing Phil Collins' gospel as Randy Newman ever got with any of the Toy Story music. I don't know, everyone has their opinion, so don't hate me too much, and it's just what I took away from it. It's just one thing I can say I didn't care for, because the rest of it is absolutely amazing. One of the best Pixar films out there, no competition. Except for this masterpiece in Cars 2. Go fuck yourself. Anyways, let's move on. So, like I said, keeping in theme with risk-taking, Tarzan was Disney's first big leap from the traditional musical they always did leading up to the turn of the millennium. Even their last film, Mulan, come on, it had 4 songs, the characters sing them, it counts. Such, Tarzan was a risk, at a time where Disney just wasn't doing the best financially. Already based on a story that historically hasn't done the best with audiences. Hiring Phil Collins to write a series of songs that would play over the scenes rather than the characters singing them was a big risk. It worked out as a lot of people recall this film because of the music. But I have heard a few people look back on this one and not like it much. And believe it or not, I'm one of the people who looked back on this film and I liked it more than when I first watched it as a kid. I really appreciate the smaller things as I grow older. I'm not explaining the plot of Tarzan, there's like 40 of these films, look one up. One thing that kinda surprised me was the animation. This was 1999, a year always associated with the year before Blue's big musical movie dropped, so the animation looking this smooth is honestly amazing. The songs, as I said, are really good. But some have pointed out how they're practically useless and are more so Phil Collins describing to you how to feel. One I specifically saw was Nostalgia Critic's review of this film, and he made some good points. I just don't agree with him. A lot of the music works as instrumental as they do with the lyrics. Sure, they play the lyrics anyway, but I think the orchestral feel is what makes it stand out. Now, in Brother Bear, yeah, that stuff sucks, even though On My Way is a bop. However, let's talk about the problems. The villain isn't the most interesting, he's just a money-hungry bad guy, and damn it, this didn't work in 1999, let's try it again in 2001. God fuck. Rosie O'Donnell Gorilla makes me wanna At times, certain parts feel dated, like, oh boy, Tarzan's skating on the vines like Shaun White. But honestly, Disney did really good here. For everything it's worth, they did way better with this huge format change that sadly ruined the movies that came after it, whether it be financially or dinosaur. For sure, it's one of the highlights of Disney's late 90s run.
With that, I introduce you to the fantastic world of gay sex.
You know what wasn't a highlight of Disney's late 90s run? Okay, let's get this out of the way. I don't like either of the Fantasia films.
Get over it!
I'm sorry, neither of them really interest me. I can respect them for being unique. I mean, at the time the first Fantasia released, it was unlike anything else in theaters. It's one of a kind. It's just not the kind I like. I get more music art fans will get into these. I'm more of a flowing narrative guy. It's that simple. I don't hate it, it's just my viewing experience. Well, it seems audiences in 1940 thought that too, as this didn't do the best when it came out back then. But in 1999, Disney was ready to make good old Walt Disney's dream, God bless his soul, come true. Walt wanted to make Fantasia a regular thing, and such, almost 60 years later, Fantasia 2000 came to fruition, god damn it. Yep, another box office dud, ensuring Disney would never make another Fantasia. Well, Treasure Planet, Mulan, and Atlantis didn't do great financially, and those are great. So maybe Disney pulled out another hidden gem. No. Fantasia 2000 is an annoying version of Fantasia 1940. The little bits are fine, and the whale one is genuinely a marvel, one of the best in either Fantasias. But I think a good thing to note is that while I don't love the original Fantasia, most of the segments were memorable. Listen, the last segment features Satan and here, what, a flamingo with a yo-yo? Noah's Ark with Donald Duck? Sorcerer's Apprentice is back, but it's in the original anyway, so this is wasted time. Oh, and don't get me started on the celebrity cameos. Dear God, I wish this was 1940 when the word celebrity would start the trials of Satan. Oh yeah, plenty of assholes in this movie that ruin it. Don't get me wrong, Walt's vision for the Fantasia series would clearly work, especially nowadays, but if Disney's interpretation of Walt's vision is this, I'm good.
Well, Fantasia 2000 is so good, where are the other 1,999 Fantasias, huh? Hi, this is Xander in a Stitch costume. Do not be alarmed. That joke was fucking terrible. Here's Doug.
No. How long has it been since I last talked about Ghibli? Howl's Moving Castle in 2004? Huh. Well, let's talk about, and I'll admit, a film I don't like more than Howl's Moving Castle or my favorite Ghibli movie, which I will not disclose today, thank you. Princess Mononoke was actually released in 1997, but as you probably know, most Ghibli films released a good while after in the States. Such Princess Mononoke didn't come here until October 1999. And while it's not my favorite of the Ghibli films, I still like it. The story centers around a cursed warrior named Ashitaka, who stumbles upon a conflict between the people of Irontown and a Princess Mononoke, a girl raised by wolves who will stop at nothing to prevent her home from being destroyed. Now, off the bat, I hear this is one of the best English scripts among the Ghibli releases. Well, it turns out it was partially developed by Neil Gaiman.
Neil Gaiman, huh? Where have I heard that name before? Oh, he's the author of Coraline. That's a lot to unpack. I'm gonna stick to furry jokes.
I do like that even with the Ghibli films I don't like, the stories are usually so well told. Well, it's not my favorite, I do like this one. Okay, our first from Madhouse, Perfect Blue. Now, what intrigues me about this one is that it's from the late, great Satoshi Kon, the guy behind Tokyo Godfathers, which I mentioned a few videos back. In fact, most call this his best film. And while I personally like Tokyo Godfathers a bit more, this is still pretty damn good. I hear a lot of people say while Tokyo Godfathers is his most emotional film, Perfect Blue is his most experimental one, and I definitely can see why. There's a lot of edgier material most people who watched A Bug's Life weren't ready for. What else can I say? This is a pretty damn good film. It's hard to really deny that. The main character, I think, is better than the three main characters in Tokyo Godfathers. There, I'll say that much.
We create the illusion within ourselves, saying that we have only one fixed persona.
We got two from Warner Brothers Animation. Oh, goody. The Iron Giant is often seen as one of their best films. I agree to some extent. It was my number 2 on my Warner Brothers Animation ranking, only beaten out by Mask of the Phantasm. That video sucks, this is easily the best film from them. What was my argument? It was overrated? I guess sex is overrated too. The Iron Giant is such a powerful film. First off, the animation is gorgeous for 1999. I always liked how the humans looked here. It's just enough from the Disney format that it looks good while not looking uncanny. The biggest risk this film took was the themes and subjects they tackled. This, of course, takes place in the Cold War. For being essentially a family-friendly fish-out-of-water story, the amount of military conflict, tension, and violence is honestly pretty ballsy for the time. And of course, Vin Diesel as the Iron Giant. Man, I give a lot of shit to Vin Diesel for, not being a good actor, but he really is good when you need him to be. And this role is just the proof why. I usually compare this to Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy. A lot of people joke how Vin Diesel was arguably the most of the main cast to essentially say the same 3 damn words. But it's the way he says the words. Like Groot, Diesel gets such a powerful performance out of the character, by only saying a selection of words. People always quote the famous "you stay, I go, no following" line, but personally, I like the line after, which is just Superman. The way Iron Giant says this is just perfect. In one word, you feel the emotion this tall, tin, multiverses cheater feels, as he knows, despite how the worst people saw him, he proved to be a hero. This has closely become one of my personal favorite animated movies, and for good reason. It's a damn near masterpiece. Which is funny because it bombed when it came out, swiftly canceling the sequel the ending of the film set up. I'ma guess advertising as that's an easy bet for why Warner Projects bomb.
That missile is targeted to the Giant's current position! Where's the Giant, Mansley?
What's the Scooby-Doo? We're coming after you. You're gonna solve.
Okay, weird. I've never talked about the Scooby-Doo films unless they're like major films. Make no mistake, Zombie Island will prevail, but why the witch's ghost? I don't remember that one. What's so special? I get it!
No, I wasn't planning to talk about Pokemon. Why? That's disgusting.
Pokemon. Yeah, 1999 Pokemon was everywhere. So, like any risk-taking Toho would do, in the summer of 1999, they released Pokemon the first movie. I really hate this titling scheme. Like, why the first movie? Did anyone walk in to see The Matrix and think, well, this ain't Pokemon? This isn't Pokemon. So they didn't want anyone confusing Matrix for Pokemon? I don't know, I hate this title. And it seems my hatred seeps in the movie. Okay, hate's tough, but God, it's a safe bet. Literally one of the most generic films to be labeled a Pokemon movie. If you watch the anime or even play the games, you could guess this plot immediately. It's so predictable, and I'm sorry, 90s kids, it's boring. The Mewtwo fight doesn't do anything for me, man, but I also didn't grow up with a lot of Pokemon games. Pikachu crying over Ash is not emotional to me. I just think about Ryan Reynolds every time I see Pikachu. I'm not the biggest Pokemon nerd, but I just don't think this is good. Yeah, I said it, Pokemon the first movie is not good. Pokemon fans have 2 disappointments to live with, Scarlet and Violet and the fact this is one of the most respected Pokemon movies, which means it's slightly not good. If you're a Pokemon fan, I guess you'd get into this, but honestly, it does nothing for me. It's a bitch, basic, simple film. I don't care what you have to say in the comments, defend Bidoof, I don't care. Another anime film, yeah, for people who say I don't talk about anime enough. And also, this is based on Detective Conan. Conan O'Brien? God, could you see that? Also, I haven't seen a single episode of this show. From what I could gather, this is a long-running anime about a detective who has some kind of condition where he looks like a minor. Oh, joy. I was just out here trying to get a Pokeball and go home. This seems like an alright premise, and the movie... Dear God, I should have watched the show before this, or at least a few episodes. I have no idea what's going on. Okay, let's talk about South Park. Oh boy, how could I end off the riskiest year in animation than with a show that defies what you can do on television? South Park, the show that dares to say, yeah, we'll make fun of race and religion and sex and literally everything under the sun. What are you gonna do about it, pussy? South Park didn't care who it offended, as long as they offended them. And I always liked how, unlike something like the SpongeBob movie or the Simpsons movie, the South Park movie came out 2 years after the show premiered. Not waiting for a peak, not waiting for the show to run for too long. Such, I always had more respect for this film. With that, the film follows Cartman, Kyle, Stan, and Kenny going to see the highly inappropriate rated R Terrence and Phillip movie, which with that logic and that show within the universe, it's like if the Rugrats movie was rated R. Could you see that? A baby's gotta do what a fucking baby's gotta do. But it turns into a big controversy as the mothers and fathers of the children of South Park boycott the movie because of it being inappropriate and teaching bad morals to their kids, unaware that they themselves are becoming inappropriate and bad role models to their own kids. Now, I have my issues with this film, but first, the good stuff. It is very funny. A lot of what makes this film so great, as alongside the show, is its humor, keeping in tone mostly with the older seasons of South Park. Also, most of the songs are not only really catchy, but very clever commentary rather than just be catchy. Blame Canada was the song nominated at the Academy Awards, but of course, it lost to Phil Collins. Infamously, actually, South Park themselves joked about it. But Blame Canada is a satire of how people often choose to blame others for stuff they themselves need to take accountability for. In this case, the parents blaming Canada for making the movie rather than blaming themselves for not being a bit more understanding or even strict, however they want to take it. Up There was clearly a parody of how many of those Disney songs at the time wanted more. Kyle's Mom is just a funny song, there's not really anything special there. I also like that this doesn't look any different than the show. Maybe it just has a little more detail, but it's kind of like the South Park games. It's charming that the animation style is so simple, it didn't need to change much. I mostly point to movies like the Simpsons movie or Bob's Burgers movie, often improving the animation and such, it loses the charm of what made the show so special. But I do have a few issues I wanted to address before the real nitty gritty of the reason I included this one. First off, the biggest problem, it drastically loses steam after the 30-minute mark, which is understandable as South Park is a 30-minute program. The same thing happens with the Simpsons movie. For the first 30 minutes, it's fine, but after that, it loses so much steam. Also, not all the songs hit. Maybe I'm just out of the loop on this, but the Brian Boitano song makes absolutely fucking no sense to me. And okay, not every joke in South Park is immediately funny, but you gotta realize I had to look up who Brian Boitano even is. And when I did, what does he have to do with anything? I never cared for the I'm Super song either. The Mountain Town song is cute at first, but it goes on way too long. Oh, and the I Can Change song. Because Saddam Hussein, get it? I don't. But okay, enough bitching. Why do I mention this film as the final movie for 1999? What gave this the risk that something like Pixar's first sequel or Disney's first non-traditional musical film or box office bomb had? As I mentioned, a big thing this film tackles is the topic of boycotting and the fear of what children watch and how it can affect them. The moms of South Park form a group and start a fucking war with Canada because they made the Terrence and Phillip movie. The satire coming from how easier it would have been to just tell the kids not to watch that stuff. Of course, when their kids disobey them, that's when it seems so clear that the movie is brainwashing them, even though that's not the case. It's highlighted pretty early that the moms aren't doing this just out of the heart for their kids. They instead want to pin blame because they themselves didn't do the best to enforce themselves as parents. This of course tackles controversy with how it's somehow everyone else's problem when a parent finds out their kid's watching something inappropriate. The whole reason for this segment in this entire year in animation exists, so I can finally say this. Come on, leaning closer.
Why the fuck would I care about what your kids watch?
Okay, if you care, that's good. Most kids are naive and they're impressionable. To be a good role model to your own children is a good thing to do. And that includes not letting them watch or play things that might leave a sort of impression on them. But since when is that, say, Trey and Matt's fault, the network's fault, anyone's fault other than yours that your child watched something that straight up says at the beginning it's not made for your damn kids? Instead of letting TV shows, movies, and video games teach your kids, you know what the best thing you can do is? Teach them! Instead of letting that box in your home raise your kids, what stops you from engaging in your child's life? Look, I'm not a parent. I'm not trained on this. I'm 22 years old. But let's put it in perspective. If you as a parent rely on television, movies, and games to raise your children rather than you, what stops your kid from distancing themselves from you later on in life? A scene happens in the movie where Kyle tries to get the attention of his mom, but she's too caught up in making a scene and doesn't see her own son, the person she claims is the reason she does this all, at his perspective. Such, when Kyle and the others rebel against their parents, it comes as a shock when it really shouldn't. Parents make mistakes just as kids do, and especially at their young age, kids are more impressionable to their parents' mistakes, and if they don't fix or correct them. And just to prove I can understand the perspective of a parent, I went ahead and asked my parents to give me their thoughts on the topic. Here's what my mama had to say. Raising kids is hard. There's no right or wrong way, but the one thing in any way you choose to raise your kid is to just be present. I won't sit here and say that my kids didn't have TV and game consoles because they did, but I would say teach me how to play that game, or this is mom's favorite movie, would you like to see if you like it? So I guess what I'm saying is they can have all the fun games and movies, but be present with them. And my dad. I can say nowadays kids are definitely raised by that stuff, and it's sad. I'm thankful that when I grew up we didn't have that and we lived in the moment. Got on our bikes and went to friends' houses and was outside all day long in the summers. We pretty much did whatever we wanted to a point. It was a great time to grow up. We were mischievous at sometimes, but within reason. Lol. My dad didn't understand the assignment, but he had the heart. At the end of the day, I might be looking too into this, but why go out of your way to make a fuss about a show that you know isn't good for your kids? Like, what parent looks at the TV and says,
This is hardly appropriate for children. It has boobies. Oh, we can't watch this. This doesn't support the word of God. Let's get something a little bit more Christian on this channel. There we go, kiddos. See, it's got a church on the cover. It has to be Christian.
at the end of it all, why go out of your way to make a fuss about what the television is teaching your kids when teaching your kids is your job? Or it's just a movie where the fat kid curses. I don't know.
You know, I've learned something today. Even though I feel like my opinions are correct, you guys might not think that. And that's okay. We can all have different opinions, and it's okay. And if you don't share my opinions, then you're wrong!